All right, let's get you caught up on a wild week in geopolitics and the economy. So grab a coffee because it's gonna feel like every major player on the world stage decided to make a power move all at the same time. First up, let's keep talking about the ongoing saga between the US and China. Remember a few weeks ago when China dropped the bombshell about restricting exports of rare earth minerals? Well, the ripple effect, it's turning into a tidal wave, and is exposing what looks like a fundamental mismatch in strategy between the US and China. Think about it like this: the US approach under Trump has been loud, public, and heavily reliant on tariffs. Think of it like swinging a giant sledgehammer. The 100% tariffs on China, the recent 50% tariffs on Brazilian beef in order to protect American ranchers, it's very in your face. But from China, they've been quietly studying Sun Tzu's The Art of War. Their move on rare earths was basically the equivalent of a skilled martial artist finding the one pressure point that brings a bigger opponent down on its knees. Now, why are rare earths such a devastating move? Because they're not just rocks in the ground, in fact, they're not even rare minerals. It's about the entire ecosystem. China doesn't just control most of the mining, they control nearly all of the processing and the manufacturing of the powerful magnets needed for, well, pretty much everything that's modern. We're talking guidance systems in F-35 fighter jets, the motors in electric vehicles, the sensors in our smartphones. A senior executive from Ford even came out and admitted that they had to shut down a plant for 3 weeks because they couldn't get those high-powered magnets. So let that sink in a little bit. A single Chinese export control halted the production of everything from stealth fighters to the iconic F-150 pickup truck. This wasn't just a random shot, it was a calculated response to US tariffs, and it sent the White House into a panic. Treasury Secretary has been publicly lashing out, but the reality is that we are desperately dependent. And this isn't a problem that you can solve with a quick subsidy or opening a new mine. As one analyst broke it down, it's also not something that you can just replicate, because just to replicate a single one of those 21 controlled elements, let's say gallium, which is vital for semiconductors, outside of China would require over $140 billion, 6 new nuclear reactors, and decades of work. China's advantage isn't just temporary, it's structural and it looks pretty permanent. Now let's pivot to the other big story this week. It's about Russia. The administration just rolled out a massive new sanctions package specifically targeting Russia's two largest oil companies. And the official line is that this is needed due to Putin's refusal to end this senseless war. But the most telling comment came from Trump himself. He said, out of one of his own conversations with Putin, where, quote, I have good conversations, and then they don't go anywhere. They just don't go anywhere. He framed these new sanctions by saying, I just felt it was time. We waited a long time. So this is fascinating because it shows a pattern. There's a clear frustration that personal diplomacy isn't working, so the default response is a hit back with economic force. The same playbook as with China, the goal is to cripple the Russian quote-unquote war machine by going after its primary source of revenue, oil and gas. The UK and the EU are also following suit, creating a united Western front on this one. The risk on this, of course, as Russia immediately pointed out, is that disrupting 6% of global oil output drives up prices worldwide and could hurt developing nations the most. And this brings us to the most head-scratching domestic story of the week, which perfectly illustrates the internal contradictions of this tough-on-trade stance. The same administration that just slapped tariffs on foreign beef to protect American ranchers is now floating a plan to import beef from Argentina, where Trump said the idea is to bring down prices for American consumers, but the reaction from his own base was swift and furious. The National Cattlemen's Beef Association, which is a traditional ally, said that they cannot stand behind the president while he undercuts the future of family farmers and ranchers. Republican senators from farm states like Nebraska and North Dakota immediately pushed back, with one of them calling it chaos. So, on one hand, we have tariffs protecting ranchers from Brazil, and on the other hand, a proposal to undercut them with beef from Argentina. It reveals the core tension, the desire to protect domestic industry versus the political need to keep consumer prices low. And this is a policy tug of war that just kind of leaves everyone feeling uncertain. So, what's the big picture as we head into the weekend? Because it feels like the US is playing a high stakes game of whack a mole, reacting to crises with its most powerful tool, financial sanctions and tariffs, but without a clear long term strategy for each adversary. The moves are often reactive and can sometimes conflict with each other, such as how the beef saga shows. But China, in contrast, appears to be playing a decades long game of Go, where their rare earth move wasn't just a reaction to something, it was a culmination of a plan set in motion years ago. With Made in China 2025, they've been systematically making themselves indispensable while making sure that they're also not dependent on anyone else. And they've built an economic deterrent that, in many ways, is as effective as a military one. And as one brilliant CEO warned, by cutting off companies like Nvidia from the Chinese market, we aren't slowing China down. What we're actually doing is forcing them to build their own technology in the process, and in doing so, surrendering the future of AI to them. The bottom line is that America is still the most powerful economy on the planet, but is facing rivals who have studied its playbook and are exploiting its dependencies. So the question is no longer about who has the biggest stick, but who has the patience and the strategic vision to win this marathon. This is about all I have for this video, so have a good weekend, everyone, and thank you for watching.